guys. I'm here to get into one of my all-time favorite films, Harold and Maude, directed by Hal Ashby in 1971. And this is like really tight of being there. It's perhaps my all-time favorite expression he made. I perhaps find this to be the most entertaining while being there. Might be the most important. You might be going important. No, this is just as important. No, who am I kidding? Because the last detail is just as important too. Because all these films are writing a perfect expressionism of joyful masculinity, literally at its corest essence. And you're literally seeing the saddest of men come to the happiest of happies. But he's juvenile sad, not real sad. It's like juvenile sad. That's the way I like juvenile sad. That turns out to be all right because you kind of find it by way of just love by simplicity through a person that you understand in just a moment. You aren't going to have them around forever, but when you do, it's like Maude just makes me think of any woman I've ever met. That's just like that timeless foundation on me, and it's just so cool. To know that a film like this just exists because, I mean, this really is like an impact of like being in the moment and just taking you through everything you need. And then when you get to the end, everything's just perfect. And you're singing your own song on your own hill, on your own mountain, entirely removed from the love you experienced, but yet you gain something that will building a forward foundation for who you are ultimately. So, I mean, this is just so cool for like just some new Hollywood. I mean, it really does kind of just make me think a lot. I mean, every bit is genius. Is like just the best '70s films. Like, I mean, this is like before Martin Scorsese came around. Francis Ford Coppola. This is like a very British eye on America we're seeing here, which is just my favorite because it's like the original indie side of just filmmaking. I think it was just genuinely America trying to capture like a British perspective, which is why I love a film like Phantom Thread so much because that's for one Paul Thomas Anderson coming to it just to kind of bring that. I think the importance of that kind of like British influence into American filmmaking. I think that's kind of a lot of what I'm kind of finding, and I think a lot of that does come through because how much of the rock culture comes from the British, music scene particularly. So, all the way from the '60s onward. So I think I'm more fascinated by that than anything, perhaps. And this is just one of the best films that kind of captures that feeling, purely an American spirit, because all this does come to America and translate as something equally strong, And I think that there's a timeless foundation to this. It feels very much like it's just a slow-paced kind of film entirely, and just like I think even more subtle Wes Anderson. Like I've learned I prefer Hal Ashby these days, although I love Wes Anderson too. But I think Hal Ashby's just a little more subtle in his all-time best. So I really love these films so dearly in my heart because it's just like goofy stuff. Like this just kind of rejects a lot of what drains me slightly about bands like Nirvana, where it's just like he's just joking about suicide. It's never serious. Like, I mean, I do dig Nirvana. I do listen to him sometimes, but I don't get in the mood for them all anymore. Like, because it's just like, yeah, that's just almost a level you don't. I don't want to ultimately go around feeling that way. I want to go around feeling the way Harold and Maude kind of communicates all your frustrations. Just be temporarily, just jokingly mad, and then you're just kind of going right along in the moment, just feeling good, like genuinely, because you have a certain love and understanding of love in your heart, and you find that. It's just the way the film builds up is just hilarious too. It's always funny. It's always bouncing around in a way that's never too serious, and I feel like it's always philosophical too. It's like a funny philosophical film without ever feeling like it's overbearing because it's just kind of communicating a simple message of just live while you can, basically. And Hal Ashby's just man. Basically, this is like the ultimate balance of a young pessimist being an elderly optimist. I think that's such a beautiful balance because it's very subtle. And I mean, the way Cass Stevens gives this soundtrack, it really does remind me a lot of like how Simon and Garfunkel is with The Graduate, as well as Leonard Cohen from McCabe is as well, where it just feels as organic as bread and butter. Like to hear this combination happen, like it's like the artists and minds were meant to be. You could tell. I mean, this is just this is one of the best films I've ever seen. It really is up there with like, I mean, as far as its impact on what a romance ultimately can be for a man, it's like Punch Drunk Love, Before Trilogy, All Exploration, and Masculine. These are all masculine explorations. It balances like a cynicism and optimism in a very jokingly kind of way, but yet impactful the entire way through because it's just ultimately very charming and cozy. I think that there's a real balance between a cynic and an optimist that can turn out to be quite timeless at the end. And I think this is that feeling captured at the purest essence possible. I mean, this is a very strong influence because it's a slow burner. It really takes its time. And I mean, it's one of the most rewatchable films I've ever seen in my life, honestly. I could come back and rewatch this. I'm finding these days, and I'm like, this is endlessly good. The best, I mean, of all films that kind of feel like a lot of that flower feeling, this is actually one of the best, along with The Young Girls of Rochefort, that come out of this time period. And I actually kind of had something really going for it, which is just the best masculine exploration of just ultimate romance feels like, a romantic man. Like, how does a romantic man express himself subtly? And it just never feels like it's overbearing or in the slightest. I mean, golly, and I just feel like this really unique kind of original kind of perspective on love really is what floats me. It's almost like an impersonal love feeling the most, and I think that he finds it through Maude. Of course, think of all the times after he never has Maude around again, so I mean he's gonna be lonely, but he holds on and preserves that as something of a keep on moving forward because I got to have that at one, that can be a forward foundation in itself. So I mean, this is just an unstoppable film, honestly, and it feels like it's a real message to communicate living life to its fullest, just while you possibly can. It's like literally, I think like Harold just finds a way by way of this entire film. It's perfect. I mean, um, again, I really love how passionate it feels in a lot of ways, and it feels like it's perfectly just capturing just a great sense of humor the entire way through. Um, I mean, I really love the music here. And it's just very charming. I feel like sometimes the '60s can be draining. I think in some spades, but I think that when you get to this film, this is kind of like the timeless ending. Of like what the rest of the '60s is doing. All this came out in 1971. This is like perhaps the most '60s film it feels like in spirit. What it's saying, communicating, is ultimately extremely '60s. But I think it's ultimately communicating innocence and the simplicity within the summer of love, particularly. Perhaps I feel like a lot of that was influences coming through it. Um, yeah, I really enjoy the soundtrack a lot, and it feels like there's nothing too overbearing about the way it presents. I mean, literally, like he acts suicidal around something. So it's like a dark comedy, but it's like literally the entire way through. It feels like a joke, and just when he meets Maude, it's just like, all right, that's his moment. Yeah, that's his gift right there. Like it feels like a grandmother figure, and that's who makes me think of more than anybody else. My grandmother, so, endless love for her. So, this man, I feel the part like literally, I feel happy just by thinking of her. so, so this is a very uplifting film with perfect, successful, not like lighthearted rebellion spirit. I think that's one of the coolest parts about it. It's like very lighthearted in the way that it expresses rebellion. I think that's a really particular expression. It turns out to be, yeah. I mean, it's a timeless romance film. I would recommend this film to anybody. I mean, this is quite perfect to what it's setting out to do. It came out near 1971, but it feels timeless. As most films in 1971 do. It seems to be a lot of directors are on to thinking futuristic, I think, this year. And I think that's what comes out through these films that are so fantastic. It's a unique amount of innovation and ambition sort of coming through, seeming through just so many of these directors. Some through maximalism, others through, like Stanley Kubrick was maximalist, Robert Altman was minimalist, Hal Ashby was just living in 1967. He made it out perfectly smoothly here at the Harold and Maude. So, yeah, I highly recommend this film to everybody. It's quite a perfect film.